Hello everyone, in this video I will be doing a breakdown of my Captain Boomerang meta DPS build, which is probably the highest DPS build in the game right now. It can one-shot literally anything and is perfect for incursions like Knock 'em Dead and Acid Flower Power. You can easily reach hundreds of millions of damage or even billions either with your firearm hits or with your melee hit if you play the build correctly. This build focuses on combining Boomerang's Sucker Punch and Bonanza talents to constantly scale the damage up from each other to the point where you one-shot your target either with firearm or melee damage. As a disclaimer, I'm not 100% sure that these talents work as they should because the damage seems to scale way too high and too quickly, so they might be bugged and the devs might fix them in the future, but I wouldn't count on that happening too soon anyway. For this showcase I am using Captain Boomerang because this build works specifically for him due to his talents. You can copy this loadout to any other character and use it as a DPS build, but it will not be nearly as effective. Let's dive into how these two talents actually work and how to use them correctly. First, Sucker Punch. This talent will take 50% of the damage from your last 5 critical hits and add them to your next melee hit. It requires 30 combo to activate. The way it works is this: whenever you start dealing critical hits, the talent will start to count, and once you reach 5 critical hits, it will become active. Once the talent becomes active, your next melee hit will consume 50% of the damage of your last 5 critical hits and deal bonus damage. You can check the Sucker Punch talent icon in the bottom left part of the screen and see how it stacks and when it is activated. Secondly, the Bonanza talent. This talent will take 50% of the damage from your last 3 melee hits and add them to your next firearm critical hit. It does not require any combo to activate. The way it works is this: whenever you start dealing melee hits, the talent will start to count, and once you reach 3 melee hits, it will become active. Once the talent becomes active, your next firearm critical hit will consume 50% of the damage of your last 3 melee hits and deal bonus damage. You can check the Bonanza talent icon in the bottom left part of the screen and see how it stacks and when it is activated. This is the core mechanic used in this build, the rotation between these two talents, which is why it is very important to understand how they work and use the rotation efficiently to maximize damage. Whenever you trigger any of the two talents by using the opposite one, we will call that a snapshot moving forward. What you want to do here is to avoid wasting the snapshot by overriding it with a non-buffed melee or firearm hit. For example, suppose you start off by stacking Bonanza up to 3 and then using a firearm critical hit. That firearm critical hit will be a snapshot because it got buffed by the Bonanza talent. Now the same critical hit will be counted towards the Sucker Punch talent, which takes your last 5 critical hits and adds them to your next melee hit. Because of this, you want to make sure that the snapshotted hit is included in the last 5 critical hits dealt with your firearm before you use your next melee hit and trigger the Sucker Punch talent to boost your melee damage. Now your melee hit that triggered Sucker Punch deals bonus damage and it becomes a snapshot again, and it will be counted towards the Bonanza talent, which takes your last 3 melee hits and adds them to your next firearm critical hit. Because of this, you want to make sure that the snapshotted melee hit is included in the last 3 melee hits before you deal your next firearm critical hit and trigger the Bonanza talent to boost your firearm damage. Make sure you keep track of the snapshotted hits and keep counting to avoid overriding them with a non-boosted hit. Repeating this rotation will constantly scale your damage up more and more, up to billions, and you will be able to one-shot any enemy no matter how much health it has. Keep in mind that depending on the weapon type you are using, each bullet hit will count as a single hit. Considering that the core of the build relies on critical hits and melee hits, we need to focus on using any items or talent combination that increases our critical hit chance, base critical hit damage, base melee damage, and base shield harvest damage, because it also counts as a melee hit. Let's start with critical hit damage. The way we can increase it is by increasing our base firearm damage and of course our critical hit damage percentage. You can do this by using the critical hit damage increase augments on your firearm, neck bomb mod and lucky charm, and using the firearm damage augment on your shield mod. Besides these, there are many talents that increase your critical hit damage and firearm damage as well, and also squad skills. As for melee damage, we can increase it through the melee damage augments on our melee and neck bomb mod, and of course the various talents and squad skills. Since the build damage scales infinitely if you play it right, even if you are missing some items or some augments, you will eventually reach hundreds of millions of damage by doing the rotation a couple of times. Most of the items in this build are purely there for the damage boost and utility. So far I was able to clear Mastery 251 with this build, but it can go up to Mastery 600 without a doubt because the damage scaling is just insane. It's only a matter of time before I reach Master 600 with this build. Let's dive into the items we are using for this build. In the Firearm 1 slot, we are using a shotgun with the stacked deck trait, which makes enemies take up to 750% more damage from all sources for each hit they take from this firearm. You want to have one from the Amertech or Intergang manufacturers because they have the fastest rates of fire, so they allow you to stack the debuff on enemies very quickly. Even if you don't have one from Amertech or Intergang, the build will still work with any other manufacturer. Another reason we are using a shotgun is because Captain Boomerang has a lot of talents that increase his critical hit chance, damage and shield harvest chance when using a shotgun. In the Firearm 2 slot, we are using the Tachycardia shotgun, which is only there for the set bonus. The Scarecrow tier 3 one-piece bonus will give us up to 1600% damage increase just by stacking up Fear and Terror, which is done naturally in this build because we are using firearm hits and melee hits constantly. For the melee, we are using Acupuncture, which makes enemies take 300% increased damage from critical hits for 5 seconds. This is an extremely powerful effect which seems to be a multiplicative damage increase, and since our build focuses on critical hits, is the perfect melee weapon. For the grenade, we are using Reign of Bane, which is only there for the set bonus. The 2-piece Bane tier 3 set bonus gives us up to 750% damage increase whenever we deal critical hits to enemies below 50% HP, and we also get 4% more damage for each 1% of the enemy's missing health. For the shield mod, we are using Unstoppable, which is only there for the set bonus. For the traversal mod, we are using the Turtle Steel Force Conduit, which gives us up to a 500% damage increase if we are constantly moving. For the neckband mod, we are using Reverse Flash's Focus. This gives us up to 250% damage increase and allows us to constantly use our squad ultimate as long as we are at full health and shield. This is an extremely powerful item in the Knock 'em Dead incursion because it makes things much easier. For the lucky charm, we are using Dr. Poison's Affliction Attunement. This charm will be our method of applying poison to enemies because of the slow dead villain synergy. Besides that, it also gives us up to 330% damage to afflicted enemies and makes enemies take 100% more damage, which is amazing. The affliction we are using for this build is Livewire Bolt. The main reason is pretty obvious here. We want to be able to deal critical hits as often as possible, and we also want to keep enemies poisoned all the time. The other 3 afflictions are completely useless in this build. Let's move on to the recommended augments on each item. For the primary firearm, you want to have critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and shield regenerated on critical hits. For the secondary firearm, you want to have critical hit chance, shield harvest chance, and suicide strike resource from critical hits. This is only for utility purposes in case you run out of ammo with your main firearm, which shouldn't be the case anyway. For the melee weapon, you want to have melee damage to brute enemies, and affliction resource from melee hits. For the grenade, you want to have explosion radius, grenade drop chance, and chance to drop grenade ammo on enemy's kill within 5 meters. For the shield mod, you want to have critical hit chance, shield harvest chance, and shotgun damage. For the traversal mod, you want to have damage to grunt enemies, damage to brute enemies, and damage to enemies that are within 5 meters. For the neckband mod, you want to have melee damage to grunt enemies, critical hit damage, and damage while shield is at 100%. For the lucky charm, you want to have ammo gain from critical hits, critical hit damage, and damage while shield is at 100%. When it comes to talents, for Captain Boomerang, we are focusing on anything that increases our critical hit chance, critical hit damage, shotgun damage, firearm damage, melee damage, and shield harvest chance or damage. Some other crucial talents are Going Hunting, which makes enemies take more damage when we hit them with our melee, Trickster, which increases our damage by 100% at 40 combo, Admiral Boomerang, which further increases our damage by 60% at 50 combo, and of course the bread and butter of the build, Sucker Punch and Bonanza. For the squad talents, you want to get critical hit chance, critical hit damage, melee damage, shotgun damage twice, damage to brute enemies, damage to electrified enemies, shield harvest damage, and the rest is personal preference. Let's move on to the build playstyle. This build may seem complicated to play, but once you get used to it, it will become second nature. All you need to do is keep rotating between your Sucker Punch and Bonanza talents. This means you need to keep triggering one after the other and keep scaling your damage until the enemy is dead. You can theoretically do this in any order, but I recommend going with Sucker Punch into melee into Sucker Punch in order to keep increasing the damage of your melee and firearm damage, and once you trigger Bonanza, your next firearm hit will deal hundreds of millions or even a billion damage. Remember to always keep track of your snapshot hit, which we talked about earlier. When Bonanza is active, meaning your next firearm hit is going to get a damage boost, do not shoot more than once or twice with your firearm, because you will override the Sucker Punch stacks with low damage hits. You want to make sure you stack as much damage as possible both into Sucker Punch and into Bonanza. An example of a clean rotation would be something like this. 2 firearm shots to activate Sucker Punch, 1 melee hit that will trigger Sucker Punch and deal increased damage, while also adding the first out of the 3 melee hits needed to activate Bonanza, 2 firearm shots to activate Sucker Punch again, 1 melee hit that will trigger Sucker Punch and deal increased damage, while also adding the second out of the 3 melee hits needed to activate Bonanza, 2 firearm shots to activate Sucker Punch again, 1 melee hit that will trigger Sucker Punch and deal increased damage, while also adding the last melee hit needed to activate Bonanza, and 1 firearm shot to activate Bonanza, which will deal massive damage and most likely one-shot the target. One thing to keep in mind is that while Bonanza does not require any combo to be active, you need at least 30 combo to be able to activate Sucker Punch. This means that until you reach 30 combo, you will only use Bonanza to deal damage and kill enemies, which should be enough anyway, although a bit slower than using both. Your rotation before 30 combo would be something like this. 3 melee hits to activate Bonanza, 1 firearm shot to trigger Bonanza, 3 melee hits to activate Bonanza, 1 firearm shot to trigger Bonanza, and so on. Now, another important part of the build is to keep 100% uptime on your squad ultimate. It should be easy enough to do it with this build, but you need to prepare yourself for when the squad ultimate is about to run out. The easiest method is to just use your Suicide Strike and Traversal attack on a nearby enemy, which will make you immune during the animations. Before the animations will finish, your squad ultimate will be back to full and you can continue the rotation all over again. That will be it for this video. Thanks for watching and I'll catch you in the next one.